In this video, we'll be taking a look at the different plant transport systems that every plant has in place. This diagram that we can see on this screen here might look a bit confusing to start with, but hopefully by the end of this lesson it will be a lot more clear. We're going to start by looking at phloem vessels. Now obviously phloem vessels are found in plants and their job is to carry sucrose or transport sucrose up and down the plant, so in both directions, not just one. These cells are also living. That's important to note because xylem cells, on the other hand, which we'll look into in a moment, aren't living. Phloem vessels are also associated with companion cells, and these are there to provide the phloem with nutrients. So as you can see in this diagram, water and food, or sugars, are transported around the phloem. Cells also have end walls with perforations, so that's like small little holes, and then you can see here that it's a two-way flow, so not just one way. Xylem vessels. So xylem vessels are there to only transport water, not sugars in this case, just water. And water will only move upwards, and that's because obviously if you're a plant and you're trying to take up water from the soil, you don't want that water to exit your plant and then go back into the soil. There's no point of that. So therefore the water only moves upwards via the xylem. An important thing to note is that the xylem cells are actually dead, they're not living, obviously in contrast to phloem cells. Another point to note is that the walls are thickened with a substance called lignin. So you need to learn that, lignin, and this is what makes the xylem vessels waterproof. Lignin actually also strengthens the cell walls, which obviously makes this vessel very strong and rigid. So let's go into translocation. Now, translocation involves the movement of sugars around the plant, so sucrose, for example, that we mentioned earlier. Now, obviously, we know that glucose is made via photosynthesis, and this happens in the leaves. This needs to be transported somehow throughout the plant, and that is through the phloem as sucrose, and this occurs in solution. So it's not just sugar traveling by itself, it is in solution. This sucrose can then either be used or it can be stored in the roots as starch. Now, transpiration, on the other hand, is different to translocation because it doesn't involve sugars. It's just to do with water, and it's the movement of water up and out of the leaves. So essentially, it's describing how water exits the plant. The transpiration stream involves it not only involves water leaving the plant, it also describes how water is then replaced in the plant as well, or how it comes back. So let's go through this example. You've got a plant that contains some water, and when the stomata are open, so stomata are small holes on the underside of the leaf. We'll go into that towards the end. But when they're open, water will actually exit the leaf, and it'll do this by evaporating into the air. Now, once that water's gone, so it's essentially transpired from the plant, more water is actually drawn up the xylem, so from the root cells, and that water then travels up the xylem. It goes to wherever it needs to throughout the plant, and then eventually, once it gets to the leaves, back to this stomata will be open, and then the water will evaporate and exit the leaf. So that's what the transpiration stream is. Just to summarize, water moves out of the top of the leaf, water moves into the roots, and then obviously the xylem to replace it, and we obviously call this the transpiration stream. And it's to do with pulling water in an upwards direction. So it never goes backwards, it's only in one direction. We also need to be able to describe and explain the different factors that can increase the rate of transpiration. So firstly, high light intensity. Now, if there's a lot of light available, the plant will sense this and it will want to carry out more photosynthesis. So to allow more light in, the stomata will open up. However, if the stomata are open, not only will light be able to enter, water will also be able to leave. So therefore, the rate of transpiration or water loss will also increase because of this high light intensity. Next, higher temperatures increases the speed of molecule movement. Now, if the molecules are moving faster, that means they can leave the plant faster as well. So transpiration will speed up in that way. Increased wind in the environment or in the atmosphere will blow the molecules away, and then again, transpiration speeds are increased. This one is a bit more difficult to understand, high humidity. Now, if the humidity is higher, so obviously outside of the plant, that decreases the concentration gradient. So that means essentially there's less water molecules within the plant, but then more outside. So then this decreased concentration gradient will actually slow transpiration down. So if there's a lower humidity, that would then increase the rate of transpiration in contrast. So to finish up, we are just going to look at a problem that plants can face in terms of water loss. Now we know that plants require water for photosynthesis, but what does the plant do in the case of, for example, a drought when water isn't as readily available? So we know that we have stomata on the underside of the leaf, but we haven't looked at guard cells as of yet. Now these guard cells essentially surround the stomata, or the small hole, and guard cells can open and close the stomata in a leaf. When the plant has got lots of water, so water is obviously readily available, the guard cells will fill with it and they'll become plump and turgid. When they're plump and turgid, this makes the stomata open up. Now, if the stomata has opened up, that means that gases can be exchanged for photosynthesis. So transpiration can occur as normal. Water will leave the plant, and then carbon dioxide can enter the plant. However, when the plant is short of water, the guard cells will become shrunken, as you can see over here. And when this happens, this makes the stomata actually close up. If the stomata are closed up, water loss or transpiration is minimized. And this happens because obviously it stops the water vapor from actually escaping during gas exchange. So we'll finish off with plant transportation there. I hope that video has been useful for you guys.